Now come to our third part of the event. We will have a panel discussion, industry insights about DevSecOps. Because normally when we talk about anything, we want to bring so many, like a different perspective. Because it's not just a technology, or it's not just about process, it's not just about people. It's pretty much every factors. So with that consideration, so let me bring our virtual panel together. So you probably already see online. So we have Shlomo from Chief CTO from Benchmark Corp. So Shlomo already say hi. Opheliar, Director of Advisory from Security Compass. And Hecber, Cloud Security Architect from Royal Bank of Canada. And Mehdi, Director of Cybersecurity Advisory Services from iSecurity. All right, cool.
Thanks.
So we have our panel here. All right, so I will be the moderator. I will also as a facilitator to on behalf of people to ask you guys questions. All right. At the panel structure is like this. At the beginning, we will ask panel speakers to do a quick intro. Then we will go through some interesting questions, and also I'm very interested to hear their thoughts. Some I will tell you is tough questions for them, and then I will base on what people ask and ask on behalf of you. All right. So without further ado, I will let our four speakers to quickly introduce yourself. Use 1 or 2 minutes. Shlomo, you want to start?
Sure. I'm a previous CISO at Fortune 500. I focus on the practitioner side of DevOps. So if anybody wants to know how to implement each of these solutions, I probably have done it in production, multi-cloud, on containers or not on containers. But I'm trying to influence the Canadian market heavily. So I'm on Strategy Council, CIO Strategy Council, Forbes Technology Council, CIO Association, Technology and Leadership Council. The list goes on. So I'm trying to do some influence, as well as Continuous Delivery Foundation and DevOps Institute. So I'm trying to create courseware to train people on DevSecOps, which I've done within the DevOps Institute, which has courseware to help people understand how DevSecOps operates and what it is.
Excellent. All right. Ophelia, or maybe you can introduce yourself.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is Opheliar Chan, and I'm one of the directors at Security Campus for the DevSecOps team there. Generally speaking, I spend a lot of my time doing product consulting these days, but I do have a background in sort of secure software development. For a long time, I did SDLC programs and things like that for people. And I was a pen tester for a number of years. I also have some development and tech writing and a couple of other bits and pieces of security research and things like that in my background. And then that's it for my day job. For my extracurricular type of activities, I'm one of the OWASP Toronto chapter leads, and I participate in a couple of other security organizations and a couple of other industry events, like I'm on the sector advisory panel and things like that. So my background is mostly in the consulting space as opposed to in direct implementation.
All right, thank you very much. Hecber, maybe you can talk about yourself.
Yes, absolutely. Hecber, Cordova. I am the lead of the Cloud Platform Security team at RBC. It has been at RBC for a couple of years now. Started with as a cloud security architect, and now moved into the platform team, and I'm working together with operations and platform engineers securing many of the different services that we are provisioning to different internal customers. Before that, I used to switch between platform automation and security. So I find myself in the intersection between platform and security, for which I have been doing for quite some time, and doing a lot of automation and embedding many of these controls, security controls, as part of the platform that is being provisioned. So that's basically me.
All right, cool. Mehdi, can you introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. It's been a pleasure to be part of this panel discussion. So my name is Mehdi Hassan, and I'm the Director of Cybersecurity Advisory Services. I'm representing iSecurity. In terms of experience, I've been in cybersecurity practice for the past 16 years now. And my role has been mostly in the consulting side because I never get bored because of the uniqueness of the consulting sector. So something about us, my current role. So I'm leading the consulting portfolio, and some of the functional services that we provide are performing security health checks or cybersecurity maturity gap assessments for organizations. Developing the roadmap, and part of the roadmap is obviously one of the key part is the application security program as well, which is one of the key domains that we cover. And then, doing threat and risk assessments exercises for particular, IT asset type. It can be SaaS-based applications, on-prem applications, penetration testing is another key functional service that we provide. We do a lot of, ethical hacking exercises, purple teaming, red teaming, blue teaming, and all that. So yeah, I mean, overall, I've been, this is my probably 16 years of experience in a nutshell.
Very cool. All right, so we have our elite panel members already ready. So now it's my turn to ask them some difficult questions. So DevOps is it's not a new term anymore, right? So back to maybe 1 or 2 years, it's a relatively new. Right now, what I can see, a lot of companies are using DevOps as a, doesn't matter, it's in their marketing, sales, or in their job board, or in their company website. DevOps become like a popular word. Then later, I guess from last year, secure DevOps or DevSecOps or security for DevOps also become the buzzwords for a lot of companies, right? So feels like it's very hot. Like people generally like this term to use it often and often. But what I like to ask our panelists before we dive into, okay, all those fancy things, the good parts, all those cool features of DevSecOps, I like to ask you, what is the biggest misconception have you ever heard from DevOps or DevSecOps? In a way, it is, we know DevSecOps is about, but what is DevSecOps not about? So what's the insight?
Are you gonna call on us, or you want us to shout out?
Yeah.
All right. So Shlomo, since you asked, so you'll be the first.
Okay. I like to follow the quorum, so I'm blunt, so everybody will get used to it. And I've always been that way because you can't disrupt if you're being sensitive to the topic. So I'd say the market is very poorly representing what it is. It's not a role, it's not a solution, it's not an outcome, it's not about tools, and it's not a checkbox, which I kind of find most organizations create a team, the person gets a title, and then they go checkbox, DevSecOps, I got it. So I think it's more about the way that I've approached it, and that's where the courseware is going, is about creating a responsive operating model for security personnel, because they're currently approaching it as gating. It should be about collaboration and using engineering principles along with the development teams and operations. So DevSecOps is to tell you what you're doing wrong and measure it so that you can start doing things correctly. And I would say that should be the focus rather than creating a title and putting checkboxes.
Yeah, so to fill the cool spot. So companies saying, do you have a DevSecOps like a manager or director there? No, you don't have. You need to have.
Exactly.
All right. So anyone else want to add on that?
So I can chime in, Bryan. So one of the I just want to basically bust some of the myths about DevSecOps. So one of the key misconceptions or myths about DevSecOps is that DevSecOps is something that you can simply buy and implement in your organization, right? So I just want to make sure that the reality is not the same. So DevSecOps, as Shlomo was saying, it's not about buying a set of technology and trying to implement in your existing SDLC. It's about all three components, which is about people, process, and technology. It should be in your culture, right? It's all about collaboration. So the term itself, the way it has originated, is about development, operations, and security. So 3 teams working in collaboration and basically delivering secure products, right? So, and also the the left shift basically methodology, which means that introducing security at an early stage of your SDLC, right? So again, as I said, it's something that you cannot buy from from the market and try to implement, but it's something that needs to be embedded in your organization culture, and it's all about collaboration as well. One of the other things that I wanted to quickly touch base is that usually the misconception is that adopting DevSecOps or the associated automation means that you're kind of giving up in your security controls, which is not the case. So I want to talk about what the reality is that automation associated with DevSecOps means that you're actually gaining more repeatability and consistency and compliance to your own security standards if you have established that governance framework for your organization, right? So if you want to achieve that maturity level where your processes are repetitive, right, and you're kind of complying to your own standards, then it means that you're achieving, compliance to regulatory requirements, and you're also delivering secure products as well. So these are some of the myths that I wanted to bust for our listeners today.
Very nice. If money can buy, that would be amazing. Hecber, I saw you raise a hand. Yeah.
I totally agree. I have seen a lot talking about products, talking about teams or roles. That's not DevSecOps. That key that is collaboration across teams is really important. Something I also, and I'm hearing a lot, it's about if that security responsibility now being moved to developers and operations. Yes, I mean, they are sharing that responsibility, the security responsibility, but also security teams are sharing that operations responsibility about application resiliency, infrastructure resiliency, and also are sharing that responsibility about fast time to market when related to apps. So now the security teams needs to come up with new ways to introduce many of these security controls. So that's really important because in many cases, people start saying that, well, now the developers needs to secure this application. Yes, I mean, we can start with them, but it's not only their responsibility. And in the same case, the security team needs to understand and what are those pain points on the development team and what are those goals that the development team has in order that they can create the right set of security controls working together. So again, it's all about collaboration, but understanding also that those goals are being shared across different teams needs to be also shared with that security team, not only the security team sharing security goals, but also sharing goals from different teams to the security team.
So communication also very important. All right, Opheliar, anything you can think about? Some like a misconception or the myths about DevSecOps?
I've got a bit of a rant here, actually. So one of the biggest things that I try to talk people around from when they go down this journey of doing DevSecOps is they often think like, hey, I'm gonna, throw a bunch of people from the dev organization and the ops organization, the security organization, and I'm gonna put them on the same team, and then they're gonna sort all of this stuff out. Or alternatively, I'll give all this job to the same couple of people and they will do a better job because they have all the pieces at their fingertips. And I feel like what I always try to tactfully tell them is that it doesn't really work that way, and that you really, if you have a lousy team structure and a lousy corporate structure and a lousy kind of environment that is very gated and very much like pulling teeth already, and they're not very collaborative, like throwing people on the same team is not going to help you solve that problem. And like that is a very difficult thing to deconstruct as to why, like the thought process, but really it boils down to a couple of different things, right? If you throw all these people onto the same team, you do nothing else, right? And then you kind of tell them like, okay, now you're all responsible for the same, like all of the things across the entire life cycle. That's cool, except that if you understand how the bystander effect works, since everybody is responsible for everything, nobody's responsible for anything, right? And so in the ideal situation, what you really want to have happen is like you kind of assume that people are going to join the same team and take responsibility for like the domains and the other things that align with their strengths the most, and kind of like form semi-permanent groups with like natural leaders that do things based on their experience, and then they pick up the slack on the bits where they already have a little bit of a skills gap, or where, you know, it's just a chore and nobody wants to do it. Realistically, if you have a good team that's already working well together, they'll do that. Like they'll do that, but they'll do that no matter what methodology you're using. And no matter what kind of team structure you decide to build, the individuals are just those kinds of people. And your culture fosters that kind of reaction to a problem, right? But if that isn't the case, then you get what happens in a lot of like super normal corporate cultures. Like I ask people like, what happens like if you all have shared mugs, for example, right? This is the canonical chore. Who loads the dishwasher, or who like cleans the mugs, right? Do people consistently do that? It's a chore, right? And you know that it helps everybody. You know that it's, you know, that it's security hygiene, or it's like operational hygiene, or it's like physical hygiene, but people just don't do it. So a lot of the times it's left to like an individual person to manage that portion. And that is exactly what happens in poorly performing teams anyway. And throwing them together doesn't solve that problem, right? And then the last part of that is sort of like, we talk a lot about collaboration. We talk a lot about, you know, incentivization. We talk a lot about alignment of the like people's kind of goals and responsibilities and stuff like that. And those things kind of require like the emotional responsiveness and the ability to like problem solve together, and this whole like culture of like, we're going to tackle this, guys, and we're going to do it together, right? If you don't have that, then you still, in a DevSecOps environment where you throw a bunch of people together, you still need somebody to manage, you know, the scut jobs. You still need somebody to manage succession of people who hold key responsibilities. You still need somebody to assign responsibility for different roles. But you could have done that without DevSecOps too, right? So those kinds of things, what scares me about people doing that then, of just throwing people together, is like, if you watch children, and like we're all big children, we have great coping mechanisms that we put into place, and we do a lot of different things to make sure our gut reactions aren't the first thing that we do. But realistically, we just behave in most of the same ways. And so when you like put two children into two different teams, then the fight that they have about like pushing off responsibility, or like, I don't want to do this, is very public, right? They'll scream, they'll yell, they'll be like, Mom. But when you put them on the same team, they're very, very likely to hide it all from you until it blows up.
Very good. Yeah, so a lot of input. So there's a lot of misconceptions there. And regarding what I heard is like money, resource, people, culture, all have the factors, right? So that's actually related to my next question. Also, very interesting questions. So people always say, okay, once we have the DevOps process or DevSecOps process, our company will gain a lot of benefits. But what if it doesn't work? So my question is, what is the biggest downside when you're adopting DevOps or DevSecOps process in your organization? Shlomo, I will call you again.
I won't say fail. I'll say reality and smoke and mirrors go away. And if you can't manage your reality, then it can be disastrous. So the mindset today from security personnel and in production is, if I see a problem that's severe, I'm going to gate you. And if you start using DevSecOps, which should be creating KPIs to tell you where you stand within code quality, the infrastructure that you have, how you're using it, your service tier, how you're impacting your personnel. All these measurements are now going to become visible. A conformance or compliance perspective, what's your percentage? What I find is when I've implemented this previously as the CISO, I found PCI compliant environments were at 14% when I measured it. So many organizations won't do this. They falsify or formulate evidence for audits. They create whatever they need to protect their jobs, but in reality, the risks exist, the threats exist. So you'll have to accept that when you measure and implement DevSecOps capabilities and the mentality of quantitative measure of your risk, your numbers are going to be atrocious. It's going to be horrendous. It's going to be an average, I've seen 14 to 20% where you think you're perfect in prod. And then the most important piece that I think everybody needs to change from a security perspective, it's the delta, it's not the value. So if you set a cadence for improvement, you say to yourself, okay, I will improve this application or this BU or business unit, if people aren't familiar, by 4% per month. And if you don't hit that, okay, find out why. But if you go negative, remove leaders. Like I've done it in my organization. I was the AppSec head, so I was a shift left guy. I changed the org. Even my own team thought if I do more work, that's great. And I said, look, if you're doing 10% of what needs to be done, it doesn't matter if you're doing 11% tomorrow, you need 100. So change how you're implementing. But again, it's focus on the delta. And if the delta is negative, that's not potentially if your process is working, but the leaders aren't promoting it. That's the downside of DevSecOps. There's no smoke and mirrors. There's no interpretation to compliance perspective. And then I kind of find the Canadian market, in my own opinion, is mostly smoke and mirrors today when it comes to DevSecOps, especially after a breach. Everybody tries to show they're super strong after a breach, but it takes years to fix these issues. 100,000 vulnerabilities, a top bank in the US, they ask for help. I'm like, what's your approach? He's like, I don't know, it's 100,000. How do I do it? I said, it's the delta. Focus on it.
Okay. The delta. So that's actually comes to the visibility, the track the progress, the measure your progress, right? And okay, so
observability of risk is essentially what you're trying to do.
Right. Okay. Hecber, you have anything to add on to that?
Yeah, I'm thinking. I mean, and that's a really good point. But I'm thinking that in many cases, what I've seen is like first, is that really some companies cope trying to implement DevSecOps, and that what brings is actually not really the DevSecOps function in the company or culture in the company. I'm seeing also that when we're trying to shift that security responsibility sometimes into dev and operations, just by sharing the responsibilities is not necessarily enough. And we believe that by sharing that, now they're going to be able to secure your platform, your application end to end. And that's not true. I mean, if they need help, they need support. And then just, oh, now I have this implemented or I have this product implemented and we are ready. That's not necessarily true. You really need to help them actually to bring all the team to the next level, to have a really security mindset and help them to have security awareness. And something I have seen that they don't have, and you need to give them time. And many companies, they don't, when they hear about DevSecOps, said, oh, well, this is going to be fast. Now I'm going to be able to protect my application and the whole process end to end. So now I'm going to be done. And that's not. I mean, it takes time. It takes preparation in the team. And I found that, for example, and when you start discussing this with developers and operations and you start working with them and help them to build many of these security controls, and you notice that at the end, they're going to start coming up with new ideas and new ways to protect many of these services, but it takes time. But when it start happening, then it's amazing. You need to keep encouraging that team to bring more and more new ideas and new controls, because now they understand if you can explain this in very simple words, and they're going to be able actually to come up with things that are amazing, and they're at the end they're going to make you faster, but it takes time. And so what I've seen is that expectation that this is going to change just in a couple of months or weeks. That's not necessarily the case, and there shouldn't be any expectation about that. And especially for big companies that believe that maybe by creating that DevSecOps team, they're done and then they're already practicing DevSecOps. So that's not true.
All right, cool. Mehdi, you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would agree with everything that our panelists have mentioned, and I wanted to add some more items. So I'm not going to say the downside. I'm going to use the term some of the key challenges that organizations face when they try to adopt DevSecOps, methodology and processes, right? So one of the key challenge that I've noticed based on my experience is that the reluctance for teams to collaborate with each other initially, right? Usually the application development team, their focus, or the product team, they're focused on the delivery of the product, right? And you try to inject the security into the process, they usually see security as a showstopper. And I think all of us have been in that position, right? And that's why we have this risk-based model where our job is to proactively identify the risks at an early stage of the SDLC or the DevSecOps process. So then you leave the decision at the business end. But that's also not easy. Business is not like sitting, free to basically look at the risks and decide on risk mitigation or acceptance all these times. So what do you need? So the key thing I would say is the main challenge is basically the people itself, the people component, right? Because people in organization, they are so accustomed to their existing, development processes. So it's very hard for them to adopt the change, especially if the expectation is that, oh, okay, now because we have this a trendy term, DevSecOps, introduced in our SDLC. Our application development, the whole delivery model will be secure, right? We are secure from all known security, threats. But that's not the case. It takes time, right? Comfort tends to. I always use this statement, and I wanted to mention it for my audience, is that comfort tends to triumph over exploring the unfamiliar, right? So the right processes and tools are required, definitely, but you need to give it time, right, for people to transition in their role and to champion that security program in your organization. So number one, reluctance to integrate or to adopt or change, right? Number two is basically, how do you, which tools you'll be using, because there are three teams involved, right? Development, operations, and security. All of them are using their own tools, right? So I call them the clash of the tools, right? So which are the right set of tools to use? There are a bunch of tools in the market, right? So the first challenge lies obviously in choosing the ones that fits best for the organization. And every organization is different, right? Their goals are different. Their DevSecOps processes are different. So, and then the second challenge is basically to properly integrate them, right, into your existing, DevOps process, which is basically to build, deploy, and test in a continuous manner, right? And these are not easy tasks to do, right? So that's number second. And the other thing is I always mention it, based on my experience. I've been a CISO, I've been a consultant, I've been on both shoes, on both sides, right? So I've been on the client side, I've been on the consulting side. Chasing perfection, right? So we usually try to, it's impossible to have a completely smooth process right away. It takes time, right? Many organizations, when they try to adapt or adopt the DevSecOps processes, they give up because they think it's a waste of time. It's too hectic. It doesn't work for us, right? They don't give it time because they are chasing after perfection, right? So I think one of the other key challenging part is that organization, they look for perfection and they give up very, very, very soon, right? They don't give it time. So you need to give it time. And then the last piece that I want to mention is basically, the general rift between security and development, right? As I said, that's why we kind of talk about always we have to focus so much on the people component in this process, not so much on the tool, not so much on the process, but on the people component, to educate your developers, your operations team, against latest cybersecurity threats, to provide, to arrange role-based and not one time, but on a regular basis, role-based cybersecurity training, not just general, right? But for example, topics like, what a SQL injection is, what an injection attack is, what is a cross-site scripting attack, what are some of the best practices the developer needs to consider when the developer is actually coding, right? It's very hard for information security department to have full visibility into that development and operations life cycle. And to be honest, they have other things to do as well, right? To maintain your risk register, right? For a lot of things, so DevOps is not the only thing that information security has to take care of. So in order for you to be successful, so in my opinion, is to basically outsource information security responsibilities to your development and operations team. But again, and Hecber, as mentioned, a very good point. It's not just developing this nice and beautiful RACI and trying to shift the responsibility and accountability towards your development, operations team. You need to have full oversight as well, right? As an information security officer. So I think all these are some of the key challenges that I wanted to highlight to my audience.
Wow, Mehdi, you actually covered a lot of challenges. So Ophelia, I don't know if are there any other challenges left for you to pick up?
I have two kind of things that I typically talk about. Some of them are, again, people things. So because of some organizations decide, like, I'm going to put all my eggs in one basket. I'm going to make this group of people do all the things, right? Which, again, I was saying is not really a terribly great idea. And if you want, there is a lot more to that rant. But I was working in a company previously, and one of my colleagues coined the term truck value. And the term truck value means how much trouble would you be in if, God forbid, somebody got a specific person on your team got hit by a truck tomorrow? And that means they're completely unavailable to you ever again, right? In the DevSecOps world, if you do what often people do, which is a little bit treat responsibility and segregation of duties and backups, because you're really focusing on time to market and you're really focusing on cutting costs and things like that as part of your DevSecOps program, as opposed to what Shlomo was talking about, which is incremental improvement and really understanding the cadence of what you're doing and making improvements to your process. If you do something like that and you focus on the wrong thing, then you'll end up with lots of people on your team who have a really, really, really high truck value. And those are the great people that will leave you too, because they can do anything anywhere they want. And so that's one of the things that is perhaps a huge downside, because you put so much responsibility and so much into people's care that they hold the keys to all the things.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you do have to be very careful about that specifically, but you always had to be careful about that. Just in the distributed layer, you have silos where you have things where you have specialization. Nobody holds all the keys because it's all documented. And so people in the DevSecOps world and the Agile world tend to be a little bit more lax about those things, whether they should be or not. In some cases, they're trying to find the balance, and in other cases, they're just focusing on the wrong thing. But that's one of those things that really I find to be a huge problem and a huge downside for people who are trying to go there and who rely on a couple of people because that skill set is short to take them there.
So
All
it's kind of like I want to comment on that because I've gone through this and I've done that and I've had a reason. A lot of organizations have a very poor talent base in this space because there's so few people. So what essentially happens is you tap the top doers in your company to say, build me the best you think you can. The problem is they get stuck on using them instead of handing over to the larger audience and say, repeat what they've made. Until you've created your archetype or exemplar within an organization, those talent guys that they hand the keys to are a requirement because the rest of the population can't possibly do it. And what you get is a very poorly constructed center of excellence that then propagates across the organization, and someone else who comes in that knows what they're doing has to clean up a very big mess. So stage, if you're early stages, you must have the top talent doers. Your leadership should go to their leaders and say, who is the best and most informative person in this space to create our exemplar? When you measure which one is the best exemplar, implement it across the board, but stop using them for it. But you need them. You can't start without them. They're key.
Absolutely.
Excellent. All right. So we cover a lot of, I would get a feeling about the negative side of the DevSecOps, right? So we talk about challenges, we talk about downside, we talk about misconceptions, but let's turn around. And I think Shlomo also mentioned you need a champion, right? So you need to have some people to champion this one. So let's say if you, how can you champion DevSecOps to a company? Right. So of course we couldn't define exactly what company is. Let's say because I saw there's a question from people. So what if there's a large organization have a distributed all kind of silos and years of legacy systems, all the things. So how do you champion DevSecOps to a company or sell that idea to the company? What's your insight? So with that, actually, I want to ask Hecber first to start.
Great question. I think when talking about an enterprise or a big company is really challenging. I think the spark about DevSecOps and this change can start everywhere, but it needs support. And saying that it needs support from top management means that you're going to need to convince that top management that we need a change in the company in order to start implementing this. My experience, you cannot just start implementing these across the board. You need to start maybe with a small project, a small program, and first you start maybe combining or mixing teams. That by itself is not going to make it successful, and Opheliar already talked about it, but at least it's a start. Also, one of the challenges that you're going to have here is that when you start defining new set of goals to the team, a team that used to have different goals and responsibilities, that's going to be difficult for them. So you need to find the right people who is going to be part of this team. I mean, you need people from developers, you need operations, you need security team, but they need really to agree with that. And you need to find that talent that's going to be able to create this team and work on this specific application, this specific program, whatever this program is. You still need to have some impact in the company. You cannot really just start with something that is really, really small. It needs to have some impact. It's not going to be necessarily a crown jewel application, but at least needs to have impact. You can start small, and by working together with that team, you can start demonstrating the value that DevSecOps can start giving to the company. But that would be my suggestion. I mean, as a champion, you need to start with a small team, identify people who can belong to that team. I think that's key because that's going to define how this program is going to work. And also you need to convince and also executive managers to really support this initiative. So having the right talent and talking to the right top managers and combining all these right talent into a team and working on the right application, I think that's a way I will start champion this. And as we start demonstrating success, you can start thinking about now scaling these into different applications. The challenge now is going to be how you keep finding the right talent, the talent that is ready to work together, and that's going to be I think one of the challenges, and I think, and after that is the challenge in that case is going to be how then I can maybe reduce part of the success on this first team, and then start duplicating this into a new team, and then duplicating that into another team to keep extending this. Again, that the next challenge is going to be more about talent and how you make sure that people actually converge into these new set of ideas and processes. So
all right, perfect. So you mentioned kind of like an MVP, right? So you need to start with like a quick win and identify the leaders and also get a sponsorship from your organization. Cool.
That's correct.
Yeah. Ophelia, any input there?
Okay, so from a DevSecOps perspective, I think the whole concept of DevSecOps, the way it's sold to people right now, sells itself, right? Management And like the key stakeholders all want to go to market faster, and they all want it to be cheaper and better and all the rest of this stuff. And so selling them the idea is really not difficult in this current environment. But selling them the reality, as everyone here talked about, is like it takes time, it takes a lot of money initially to build that in, to really get people past some of the initial bad questions I say that they currently might be asking. So I was talking to a friend of mine who is a former manager of mine, actually, who's now a CISO, and he was saying like he had to work a long time to get the executive team past questions like, are we secure now? Which is totally the wrong question. It's like, are we more secure than we were yesterday? Maybe. Are we secure against the things that we care about? Maybe. Right? Are we using our money wisely? Maybe. Right? But are we secure now is probably the wrong question. So those types of things where you're trying to really change people's minds about the reality of where you're going and get people past like the whole, because we talk about measurement as one of the key things to both automation, keeping track of whether or not the automation is working, and then also as the key part of DevSecOps in terms of continuous improvement, right? If you don't know where you are today and you don't kind of know where you kind of want to be tomorrow, it's really hard to do that. But like if you're in a place where even the executives kind of want to hide some parts of the failures that they're doing for various good reasons as well, right? They have pressures too. Visibility in those areas might not go over well for them. So you really have to get to where their headspace is and show them, the future path that this investment that they're making and all of the little things that are going to happen in the meantime are going to get them to a much better place where they no longer really have to hide the stuff that they're doing. Because or some of the reasons for which they need to currently maybe not be entirely transparent go away. And if that isn't the case, then you need to help them understand where they're coming from and help them do the right thing, right? So a lot of it is going to the people and kind of understanding how the reality is really going to hit them, and get them to ask the right questions, get them to think about the problem in the right way, and then show them that you can get them there. But
Excellent.
it is a long we're struggling with this problem now of like reality and really showing like ROI and value and things like that. So there's a lot of research going on in that field.
Yeah. So not only sell the benefits, but also sell the reality, let them know what they are facing, what kind of measurement, visibility, right? So those are the tracking part are really important.
Yeah.
Shlomo, anything you can add on that?
Okay, so I'll touch on what I think the core problem is. Every team has no time to do this. So if you take the approach of putting more tasks on teams, you're going to get nothing done. So I've been there. One is to educate people on how to change their approach instead of trying to increase their workload. Oh, if I do more workload, I look good. No, that's not actually works. What's your end state need to look like? If you can't achieve it, change your mode. The most important part of all of that, though, is you need to focus on what the model looks like so people know how to interact and adopt. That way, they know what their lift is. If you tell someone, I need you to do DevSecOps, here's my stuff, go and do it, nothing will happen. You need to create swagger. You need to create inner source models where one team's lift becomes another team's copy. And people should quote that, because if you miss that, you'll go nowhere. There's no point a talent base creating content that's not reusable for other teams in some isolated POC. Create it for everybody, create the template library, incorporate the template library into your onboarding process, teach the people who run the operating model how to run the onboarding process, and then take teams through. And if your feedback is, I can't incorporate this into 5% of my available time, you're doing it wrong. And you need to tweak your process. You need to tweak the help. No team has the ability to say, I'll just do 20% more work. We're understaffed. The economy is under pressure. And if the economy is under pressure, we're firing people. If we're firing people, people don't have time. So if you're not responsive within the model and it's not structured in a way that you can actually get people through it easily without being a super talent hero, then we're doing it wrong. And I kind of find that's what happens. We build a POC, there's nothing supporting people through. The documents go out of date, and the change agents just keep saying, "Go follow me," but there's nothing supporting people. Recognize time is very short. Recognize you can't lift too much at a time, and then give them that inner source model so that they can, as others are saying, shift left. But in reality, it's just a lot of work. You need to make it a little.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful, great input. And also specifically like the one kind of like an internal sharing, because especially for large organization, people are working as a silo. It maybe one team actually done tremendous, excellent job, but if that knowledge or experience or lesson are lost, so other people cannot benefit from them, then that's kind of repeat the same work. That's great insight.
I'm not sure that gets fixed anywhere, to be honest. I've seen it it's very elusive. The reason being is people want to charge others chargeback numbers to use their technology, even inside organizations. I've seen it within banks. They do it. They're like, I'm awesome. You want to use my pipelines? I'm going to charge you back some dollars. That's undermining things. You have to remove that mentality and then do an open source, inner source model within your own organization and say, this is an exemplar. I have an awesome capability. Here's the measurements to show you what we were able to achieve. I want you to achieve this too. I'm going to share it with you. Here's the guild repository for all of you to follow. I'm going to share everything I got. It just doesn't happen because budgets are budgets in enterprise, and people want to get more budget from someone else if they want to help them. And it damages organizations. But brown dollars and green dollars truly exist in enterprise.
Yeah. It's also the culture. All right, Mehdi, anything else you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think those are some good points. I do mention, however, some key points. So obviously, first, I think the first question was, how do you sell this in your organization, right? When you join. So I can share my experience, my practical experience. In my previous life, one of the companies, their sole product was a healthcare application, SaaS-based application. So when I joined, one of the key challenge was that how do we improve our application security program, right, in their CI/CD pipeline, right, the model. So I think what worked for me, I don't know, not necessarily it can work for others, right, with a huge disclaimer, right, but this is a tested and trial model. So you can use compliance as a hammer, number one thing, right, because the management, they understand compliance, right. So if they're not for requirements or compliance mandates, right? Because compliance and security, they go hand by hand in parallel, right? So first of all, you need to do a quick health check on your existing application security program or processes, right? So obviously you need to bring some awareness to the management, right? What's the current status? It's like you walk to a doctor's office and you want to know what your current health status is before taking any medication. So if you don't know what your current issues are in your existing development life cycle, I don't think you can easily sell it right away to the management. So first of all, you have to do a quick health check to know where your existing application security program or DevSecOps program stands. What are some of the key gap areas against some of the benchmarks or some of the industry trends? They usually get it when you try to scare them, right? And also it's a good tactic, right? So you show them, okay, where do you stand versus some of the other similar verticals, in the business. So you first, that's the first thing. Number second is, once you identify the gaps, is basically, as I mentioned before, it's all about collaboration between development, operations, and security. So you need to communicate with those teams. You need to understand what they are currently doing. In my previous experience, one of the developers, he reached out to me himself, right? He arranged a meeting, and then he opened up his laptop, and then he opened his Excel sheet. And in that Excel sheet, he was tracking every vulnerability that he was identifying in the code. And he was using, for example, a SaaS tool, SonarQube, and he was running the scan on the code, and he was tracking those issues. So he had that security, mindset, but he wanted support. He wanted that communication and collaboration. When he came to me, the first thing he said is that, nobody from information security talks to us. They don't know what we are doing, right? There's no communication. There's a huge communication gap. So you need to collaborate. You need to communicate. You need to reach out to those teams as a as an information security officer, right? And understand what their issues are, what they're doing, and then select those. It's not hard to select those security champions in every team, right? So a lot of these developers, they have good interest in becoming security professionals themselves. I've done a lot of assessments. Unfortunately, we identify a lot of critical gaps through pen test exercises and supported by logical threat and risk assessment exercises. And then at the end of the day, when we are going through those findings in their application, or application or software suites, either hosted on the cloud or on-prem, one thing that they say is that I have a huge interest in security, but I mean, I'm not trained. I don't have time to get training on security. If I wish I should have some extra time. So what we tell their management, I've been in conversation with the CEOs for some tech companies, right? And I've been telling them upfront and bluntly, and I say, look, if you want to champion your application security program, if you want to deliver a secure product, you need to train these developers. You need to send them on training, right? You need to put some pressure off these trainings. You need to have some more resources to support them, right? And obviously in collaboration with the right processes and right set of technologies as well, right? So it's all about, in a nutshell, it's all about building their confidence, conducting role-based training, right? And as a CISO or as an information security officer, it's your responsibility as well to show the value of the DevSecOps program to your risk or steering committee, right? Okay, where did we start from? And after implementing DevSecOps, where we are, what's the value that the business is getting right out of it? Otherwise, no visibility, no communication. I don't think you're gonna sustain that DevSecOps program, for a longer period. I mean, that's
Okay.
at least based on my experience.
All right, cool. All right, so a lot of great thoughts there. One thing I heard again and again are people or talent or knowledge. Because only when you have people know what they're doing and they communicate well, and also maybe on the good culture and support or enough budget, you can achieve something amazing. So that's actually kind of like a project management, change management as well. So with that said, I'd like to touch on one important area or question to the panel about the talent development. So you guys all touch on here and there on that one, but I want to come up with a specific question. So DevOps or DevSecOps looks like the industry trends, and many people were in a way involved with that. So how can we develop more cyber talent in the DevOps process? So, or putting another way, so if there are people interested in go through this DevSecOps as their career path, what's your suggestion for them to do their career development? So I know, actually, I saw some article from Shlomo before or some like an event before, so I will give you the first chance to talk.
So I kind of find with any job, find the person that can, so like if you do school, I don't say follow the school that has the best parties, unless that's what you want to achieve. Go to the school that has the best program. So in this respect, because there's no real programs outside of like the DevOps Institute producing courseware, and I help them produce that courseware, you need to find a practitioner that can teach you so that you can see how they think, you can see how they practice. This is not something you learn by reading. The reason being is the experiences are much richer and in more depth. So I would say target an organization that has a DevSecOps offering, not from a tool perspective, not from a software perspective, but from a solution perspective, because DevSecOps, as some people present it, and it's not to bash tools. If someone says I use Sneak or Snick, that's not DevSecOps. And you're not going to learn how to be a practitioner. You're not going to learn how to help an organization. You'll learn how to implement software. So I'd say target an organization, maybe a system integrator that has a specialty in the space. Find a practitioner that will mentor you. I find that's the most important part in any job. It doesn't really matter what area. If you find someone you respect that has the quality and caliber you're looking for, and they agree to mentor you, they can open doors because of their capabilities in the market. I do this within councils. If councils want to publish somewhere and they don't have connections, then you use what the council leaders have. Maybe they can help you there. So I kind of, on a tangent there, I do hire, I do mentor. So if there is someone that has the keen interest and passion to actually do this, I do meet with about 4 or 5 students today to train them on different subjects. But if DevSecOps is something that they want to achieve, I can give them white papers that I published, or we can go through a regular session once per month that I can fit in. I always find time per month to help a mentee from a mentor's perspective. But that's what you need. You need someone that's been through the experiences to share with you and give you guidance so that your path is shortened to catch up to them.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's a very important, the mentor-mentee relationship, and watch someone being there, done that, and that'll give you a lot of insights. Opheliar, you're also the leader for the OWASP and security sector, and also on the application security side. So what's your input for the talent development?
If you're starting out from school, for example, and I give school kids the same advice, which is get your hands dirty, right? You gotta get in there. A lot of the job postings, the initial entry points into these kinds of jobs are still very tool focused. So you can get the experience running open source versions or even like the free versions of all these different tools and just kind of try to understand how they work together, how what they operationally do. And then the rest is all just good attitude, trying to learn on the job. As Shlomo mentioned, like once you actually land a job because you have some sort of, because you have the curiosity, you can show that you have the curiosity about the things and you're a self-starter because you have started projects by yourself and that you're tinkering with things by yourself, you will find a mentor within your team, hopefully, who will help you, or at least you'll have somebody to aspire to because you have teammates, right? Mm-hmm. If you're kind of in there already in a tech job, then I do tell people that they should be focusing still on some of the fundamentals of the area. Like if you're from a development background or an operations background or a security background or whatever, you do have counterparts on the other teams whose concerns overlap already with yours. And so learning about those things and being able to do them as well is one of the first steps to being a lot more cross-functional. And it's an easy thing to do because you do it with them today. And if you don't, then there's probably something wrong, right? So those are the inroads into becoming a more sort of well-rounded individual. And that will give you enough of a start to get into, to start saying that you want to do DevOps full-time and having the capability to do it, I think. So,
excellent. Yeah.
Peers and figuring it out. Based on trying things out. So there's lots and lots of places where you can start to get your initial start with DevSecOps tooling, for example, and then books and things like that. I think if you even just look on GitHub and you do a search for awesome DevOps or awesome DevSecOps, you will get at least 10 or 20 hits for people who have compiled like their best of learning DevSecOps, both in terms of tooling and material. And that's an interesting, like a decent place to start because they'll have a different slant on how they approach the topic in the first place. And they'll tell you what are the things that they found to be the most useful. And more to the point, they'll point you to the tooling that they're using. Right. So you can kind of like try it because doing is still better than talking by far.
Excellent. Doing it is better than talking. Great. Okay, cool. And we're actually getting closer to the end of this panel discussion session. And so Hecber and Mehdi, can you each give like a 30 seconds comment on that talent development? I know it's a little bit short, so can you quickly give some comments?
Yeah, so I'll chime in quickly. So yeah, I would agree with with our panelists. So what I think some of the key things that are as new grads or somebody who's interested in joining DevSecOps area is obviously like any other field. I always say that you need to have some knowledge, some base knowledge of information security domains, right? So familiarize yourself about some of the information security domains or best practices, right? And there are a couple of certifications as well. But before you get into the certification part, I think it's very important to join an organization. It can be a small organization where there's a lot of work for you to do. So as Opheliar was saying that, get your hands dirty, right? And be part of the process, gain as much experience as you can, learn, right? Because theory versus practical, it's always different, right? Having a theoretical knowledge is good. Do some research. Google is your playbook, so you can Google about any term, about any. I think a lot of videos are good videos or content is available, free source on Udemy, on YouTube. There are a lot of other channels, right, available for you to gain a knowledge, that basic or initial knowledge, and then aim for that certification. I think certification is also the key, right? You need an attestation in your skills in order to get to this market. So certification, like I'm not endorsing anything, but I'm just giving some examples. For example, in the likes of CSSLP, I think from IC Square, and there's a couple of other ones as well. There are some nice frameworks available, open source frameworks, like for example, from OWASP or OSS TMM, that you can read and research. Around infrastructure security or operations, there are some nice frameworks like MITRE ATT&CK framework, right, that you can explore. So a lot of content is honestly available, free source online. If you have time, I wish I have the time. I have so much thirst to gain knowledge, right? But unfortunately, we're at a stage time is the key thing, right? So I don't have time. If you guys have time, this is the best thing that you can have at this point. So do your research and get your hands dirty.
Perfect. And speaking of time, Hecber, 20 seconds then.
Yes, I mean, quickly, I think finding the right mentor, that's the most important. Initially inside the same company, that can help a lot. Otherwise, look externally and continuous learning. I think you always need to keep learning and trying to connect with people from different areas that can help you also to understand their own processes and how they are automating many of these different processes and what the challenges are in each one of those areas. So, but that's key, I think, mentorship and continuous learning. That's basically it.
Excellent. Yeah. All right, cool. Thank you very much. So that's our elite panel, and we learned a lot. I personally kind of really enjoy their different perspective and also touch on the key areas, because those are the people, they experience the DevSecOps and also know inside and out what's the pain point, what's the challenge, what's the best practice. There's still a lot of unknowns as the industry is moving, but we get a lot of good perspective from those experts here. I'd like to ask everyone, give our speakers a virtual applause. So thank you very much for your time to contribute and bring your great insights to everyone. Thank you very much.